Now, last part of newsletter 2014-1 is more to deal with the fact that we had all these great examples. I don't know if they're great, but I think they were good examples that were repealed and replaced by 10 examples about a year ago. So up until last September, CRA had published 128 examples, according to its own numbers, in every industry. I mean, they had machinery examples, plastics industry examples, software examples, automotive examples, aerospace. And what was really good is that most of these examples weren't just developed by the CRA, they were developed by groups of CRA and industry, usually 20 to 100 people in most cases, that got together, that sat there for days, that really negotiated. The CRA had its view, industry had its view, and they came to, hey, here's something in the middle that we can both live. I'm not saying it was the perfect descriptions, but it was plausible, that it at least addressed both sides' concerns. It wasn't one-sided. Now, what I'm told now from discussions with CATA and Ottawa and other things is saying, well, why did they pull all these descriptions and replace them with non-project descriptions? So the 10 examples that they've released now, they clarify, these aren't real projects, they're just supposed to illustrate one concept, like uncertainty, or advancement, or systematic investigation, or commercial versus... And I'm saying that I know they think they're trying to simplify things by showing a single issue, but I actually find that more misleading, because I'm saying to illustrate technological uncertainty on its own is almost impossible, because I'm saying I don't believe there's technological uncertainty unless you've benchmarked standard practice. If something's within standard practice, there's no uncertainty, so you can't identify that or isolate it and be informative. I think that's actually more misleading to do that, and that the concepts they're trying to convey are actually being diluted, not enforced, that a complete project, in my opinion, actually does more. The CRA's argument, and this is where I think the way things are going, for not making robust examples, is they said with the prior examples that they've repealed or eliminated, that claimants were not understanding the principles of why something's eligible. They were actually taking the examples and almost copy-pasting or trying to follow that example as close as possible, even if their work was different. And they're saying that's not what the examples are intended for. They want examples that use principles or illustrate principles of why something's eligible, rather than specific fact scenarios, they're saying, that really become dated, that 2 years later that's not an advancement anymore, or that's within standard practice. But at the time, illustrating the principles. Now, I'm saying at this point, I don't have a lot of hope in the CRA with their 10 new examples or the principles. I think it's going to be years before they get out anything that's really useful again, just based on the fact that it's been a couple years for these examples already. But there are lots of examples still out there that can't be repealed by the CRA. And the two main sources are the Tax Court of Canada. Once a tax case is done, that's it. It's like a patent. I can look at a patent from 100 years ago, and it's still there, exactly as it was filed. And in 100 years, it'll still be there. Okay? Same with a tax case. CRA can't repeal it. They can't. This is different. That's law, and it's public information. So maybe the industry should develop its own examples using tax court precedents. There's lots of information. That might be a good basis, and then it's not something that the CRA could necessarily control. They can talk about whether they agree or disagree, but basically leave it there. The other large source is, as I mentioned, the international definition of SR&D, or R&D, research and development, is the same in almost every country. If you look at the Australian rules, for instance, they have verbatim definition of what's eligible. And they've developed all these examples themselves. And these are actually very good examples, complete examples, just like ours. Objectives, prior practice, uncertainties, analysis, results, conclusions. They follow exactly the model that we would want, and they're accepted by the Australian government. So I'm starting to say, if these guys have such great examples, and we have exactly the same law, maybe we can use some of their examples, or at least be aware of them, or look for ideas in there that might indicate that we're eligible here. So these are examples for the energy industry. And what I've done is sometimes I have clients who deal with batteries or anything in here, and I'll take that example. And I'll say, this is just an example to illustrate, for illustrative purposes, how a project would flow. And it's Australian or whatever, but the rules are the same. And science is the same. Science in Australia, physics in Australia is the same, battery works the same as Australia is here. I don't know. Water spins backwards, but everything else pretty much works the same, right? Okay, so that's 6 examples just for the energy industry, and then they have complete examples, 6 or more, for all kinds of other sectors. So I'm saying right there's a wealth of information of the Australian legislation and rules that would be completely applicable to Canada. So maybe it just makes sense to look at some of those, or be aware of them for your clients in those industries, that they might provide an example that would be the same issues here in Canada.